Okay, hello everybody. And sorry for the delay. We had technical difficulties. So we are continuing this week to talk about Pesach, specifically about how we can sit at the king's table on the Seder night, how we can truly connect to Hashem on the Seder night. A little bit of logistics first. This is our last class before Pesach. With next week, we won't have a study together, and not the week after during Chol HaMoed. So we will be back in 3 weeks from today on the 27th. So we will have had two sessions, two study about Passover. So we talked last week about Korban Pesach and how Korban Pesach is and hello everybody, Tesha, and I suggest everybody also to, if you can open up your camera, this will be nicer. So we talked about the Passover lamb, Korban Pesach, and we talked about how eating the lamb, which is very special because it's the only sacrifice which, despite the fact that it's being called Hashem sacrifice, we are eating it in our home, not even in the house of Hashem, in the Mikdash. And we have seen that this is, we eat the Passover lamb when we're already satisfied. So it's really about delight, about oneg. Hashem is basically telling us, eat the most tender meat together with bitter herbs and matzah. This is the most delicious meat, and with chimichurri and bread, and eat it for your delight. And we have seen the laws of the Korban Pesach, and now the Korban Pesach is a way to achieve freedom at multiple levels. So now we are getting closer. So this week we have Shabbos will be Shabbat HaGadol, which is also very much related to what we discussed. Why Shabbat HaGadol is called Shabbat HaGadol? The Tur is explaining that because there was a big war, Shabbat HaGadol because of the big war, the big Shabbos because of the big war, a civil war within Egypt between the firstborn and the rest of the Egyptian, because they asked, when they saw that the Jews, the Hebrew, were taking a lamb, their idol, and they said, what are you doing? And they said, Hashem will liberate us and all the firstborn will die. And this triggered riots between the firstborn and the rest of the Egyptian. The firstborn wanted the Egyptian to let the Hebrew go, so they will survive. So we see the power of the Passover lamb to free us from Egypt, but even we have seen that this is more than just an historical freedom back then, but it is a freedom today. And it enables us to connect to our supraconscious and realize that how much Hashem wants us to have delight in this world. So what we want to talk today is we want to look at the Seder night And we want to look for how we can, when we don't have the kosher lamb, we don't have the Passover lamb, how we can achieve this level of conscientiousness and what the Seder is all about. If I ask you, how much do you enjoy the Seder night? How much do you enjoy the part before the meal? Yeah, anybody has an answer? An honest answer. We are asking for an honest answer. We won't tell the rabbi.
It depends.
Oh, it depends. That's already a good answer. Okay, let's face it, it's a boring greeting. We want to eat and we're waiting hours for the meal to start. What's going on? Why it should be that way? Okay, so that's a journey. We want to revive the Seder night. Okay, we want to enjoy the Seder night. You know, and it has to be enjoyable. So that's what we're going to try to do today, how we enjoy the Seder night. And what's the profound meaning of the Seder night. So and this way you're going to get ready also for it. So let's look at the Seder. So we have about 15 steps during the Seder, if you remember. So let's go through it. Kadesh, we start with the Kiddush, right? We do the Kiddush. Then the one reading the Seder is washing his hands. Typically it's a man. Then we do the karpas, we eat the celery or whatever, a chazeret, for something pretty disgusting. We put it on salt water, so it's even more disgusting. And we do borei peri adama, we eat it, and we don't eat kazait. It's forbidden to eat kazait because if we eat kazait, we need to do the last blessing. Then we do yachatz, we break the matzah, we call for the poor, and we remove the table, we do manishtana, the sons ask manishtana, then we get into the whole agada. We start telling the whole thing. And people are starving to death at that stage already. You have angry people that are about to kill you, as I'm the Seder reader, and we go until like midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so people are going nuts. So what we do, we let them eat nuts and klayot ve'egozim during the reading of the Seder. Let's get them a little more quiet. Then finally we get to motzi. We eat the matzah on the side, left side. Don't forget. If you forgot, you start all over again. You need the kazait of matzah, at least one kazait. Then we eat the maror, delicious maror. This time you don't lean on the left side because it's not a sign of freedom, but a sign of slavery. Then, if you didn't add enough, you do a korech, meaning you take the maror with the matzah, with the charoset, and you do like kile. Finally, at that stage, you eat. Finally. And then you eat the afikoman as a dessert. And as you remember, the afikoman is really zecher lekorban Pesach, which you eat when we are satisfied, and we don't eat anything after the afikoman. Then we do the blessing, the birkat hamazon, on the third glass, the hallel on the fourth glass, and לשנה הבאה בירושלים. Okay, did I forget anything? So that's a high-level view. So let's look into more. So I want to go through some anomalies of the Seder to discover, and I'm not making fun of the Seder, I'm trying to discover using the Gemara, using the poskim, how do we connect to the Seder? So the Gemara in Psachim, there is an entire chapter in the Talmud, in the Psachim tractate. This chapter 10th is all about the night of the Seder. Highly recommend to read it. It takes a couple of months to understand it. I've been going through it and I still need to finish it up. But the Gemara is asking, why do we need yeah, by the way, I don't have a version, written version of the class, but there is a recording that I distributed in the WhatsApp. Okay, every class is recorded. You can go back to it. We don't have, you can get a transcript from YouTube, I believe. I don't know how to do it. Maybe only Elazar can do it. I don't know. So the Gemara is asking, why do we need two dipping? Right? We have seen that in Karpas we are dipping first. Tibul, we take bitter herbs. We do that twice. We do that at the beginning of the meal, just after Kiddush. And we do that after we eat the matzah, we eat maror. And we bless on the maror. So the Gemara is asking, what's going on? Why do we need to do this twice? If we need to do it for maror, we have the second time when we do it for maror. So why do we need the first time? And the Gemara says we are doing this weird thing of eating bitter herbs at the beginning of the meal. I mean, not at the beginning of the meal, a lot at the beginning of the evening, before the reading of the Haggadah and everything, in order to prompt the young children to ask. So there are a lot of things this night that we are doing in order to prompt the young children to ask. The Gemara is calling it Ekera letinokot, to awaken the curiosity of the young children. Hold on, איתיאל, הכל בסדר, פשוט לקח זמן לזר להתחיל את המיטינג.
You sound lighter. Did you take care of business?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that's what the difference is.
אני בשיעור, ביי. Okay, we will mute some folks.
Batting average 120.
Let's see. Okay, looks like it's going. Okay, so the Gemara is saying, why do we need two dipping? And we need it in order to awaken the curiosity of the young children. They're going to see us dip twice, and they're going to say, hey, Dad, what's going on with you? Why you are dipping twice? Did you ever have a child which asked this? No, they never ask. So why are we doing it? I don't know. We need to answer that. Okay, first anomaly of the Seder, okay? If you have an answer, why we dipping twice, you tell me. The other question is, let's say the son asks it. Why should we tell him? We are dipping twice in order to awaken your curiosity, so you would ask. Okay, now that I've asked, why are you doing it? I don't know. It's written on the Haggadah. We're not doing it to be Yotze of the maror, because it's the second dipping when we are Yotze with the maror. Okay, so we will need to answer this question. Question one, but God willing, we'll answer all questions. We're not just rocking the boat to rock the boat. We're rocking the boat to better understand. So then we get to Yachats. Okay, remember Yachas? We break the middle matzah into two, and we said, Alach ma'anya de'achla avatana b'Mitzrayim. This is a bread of poverty that our father ate in the land of Egypt. Okay, so that's what we say. And indeed, we need to tell the Agada. The Talmud is saying that we tell the story of the exit of Egypt on this bread. The matzah is the bread which awaken our history, our remembrance of our pain, and this is a bread of the poor. You know, every bread, if you look at bread in general, it's not just food. Bread is more than food. Bread is culture, right? If you talk about the focaccia, this is Italian culture. You know, colorful, tasty, with olive oil, you know, and that's the beginning of the pizza. This is not just bread, food, this is Italian culture. If you talk about French baguette, the French baguette, it's not just a bread, this is a stylish style, the French chic. Okay? So don't ask me about the bagel. Okay, don't ask me about the bagel. What type of culture is it? Okay, but what is our bread? Our bread is a matzah because we are a people of slave. This is the bread of the slave. So our culture is that we are a people of slave. We are saying we are proud that we are slave, and because we are slave, so we are the ultimate poor. It's a bread of poverty. So that's why comes the second sentence: whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and join the Passover lamb. This year here, next year in the land of Israel. This year slaves, next year free people. So this is our statement at the beginning of this night. We are a people of slave. But here are some questions. We are inviting, because we are a people of slaves, because we have endured slavery, because we have endured poverty, so we are more sensitive, like the Torah says. You will be helping the widow and the orphan and the poor and the foreigner, because you have been foreigners in Egypt. Basically, because of our 210 years of slavery, because we became a people as a people of slaves, so we are more sensitive to pain. At least we should be. And that's why we're inviting the hungry and the people which are alone. We're inviting them to join us. But wait a minute, we are inviting them now. We're not going to eat for the next 3 hours. So why are we inviting them now? There are stories of poor people which got invited at the beginning of the Seder at Yachatz, and they were like, what's going on? You know, he invited us to eat, and he's hungry. So we are inviting the poor and the hungry to sit and listen for 3 hours. And if we are inviting them to the Seder, maybe we should invite them before the Kiddush. Why now? So that's our second question for today. Another question here is also, how can we invite people to join the Passover lamb? You remember that the Passover lamb is only being eaten by people which subscribe initially before the Passover lamb was slaughtered. So you cannot join the meal. And then why we apologize, then why we say this here, why this has to do with the other statements, with the invitation. So we have question about Yaacov. So that's the second anomaly. Third anomaly, we get to Manishtana. So let's look at Manishtana. We have 4 questions in Manishtana. Now the child asks Manishtana. What makes this night different from all nights? On all nights, we need not to dip even once. On this night, we do so twice. On all nights, we eat chametz or matzah. And on this night, we eat only matzah. On all nights, we eat any kind of vegetables. On this night, only maror. On all nights, we eat sitting upright or reclining. And on this night, we all recline. We lean on the... But wait a minute, we didn't start eating. So how come that the son is asking about the meal? The son is asking 4 questions all about the meal. About the dipping, we have dipped only once. He doesn't know we're going to dip a second time. How he's asking? He's asking about the second dipping before we did it. If you remember from last year, so he was supposed to be spontaneous questions. And we didn't eat matzah yet. We didn't even start to eat anything. So I know that we're going to need only matzah and only maror. So something is weird. And we didn't start leaning yet. We just started. We're all sitting down, and all of a sudden he's asking all these questions. So we don't really understand Manishtana. I don't really understand Manishtana. What's different this night is that the children are asking questions they learn at the Gan. And they repeat them like paroquets. But do we want children which are paroquets? That's what we want. This is actually against the Mishnah. The Mishnah is saying you need to teach every son according to his mind. And we know we have 4 prototypes of sons: the Rasha, the Chacham, the Tam, and the one which doesn't know how to ask. And we have different language for different sons. So this night we need to adapt ourselves to all the different people which will be sitting around us, not just the children, to all the people. Some are upset and they don't want to be here. Maybe they're like the Rasha, and some are very smart and they want to hear about, they want to have a lot of discussion about every details and subtleties, and they want to understand the halacha. And once he's just apathetic, and he doesn't know what to ask. He's just like, hey, yeah, I'm sitting around waiting for the meal. And we need to adapt. But then we're asking the son to just parakeets, yes. We're asking the sons to behave like parakeets. Okay, so that's second anomaly. Anomaly number 3. The Talmud is teaching us, if you look at your Agada, if you remember, before Manishtana, or actually we have put the Seder plate on the table, and after Manishtana, we remove the plate. Actually, we remove the plate just before Manishtana and we return it back after Manishtana. So why do we remove the plate to take it back right away? So the Talmud is telling us, so again, before we say manishtana, we remove the plate. The child asks manishtana, and then we return the plate. At the time of the Talmud, it was not just a plate, it was a table. Every one of the people eating would get a small table. They would lean on couches and they would get a small table with the food. That's the way. They didn't sit at tables as we do with chairs. They would lean on couches. And this is not just during the Seders. This is the way people would, their living room was also their dining room. So they would be on couches and they would have small table, personal table where the food would be presented. So the Talmud say, we don't remove the table just before manishtana, but only the table of the one reading the Haggadah. So why do we remove the table? The one reading the Haggadah, he's a poor guy. He's taking away his food. So why do we remove his table? And again, the answer of the Talmud is in order to prompt the young children to ask. So the child's going to say, hey, what's going on? Why are you taking the food? We were supposed to eat now, right? What do we tell him? So the Maharal says, when it says, why are you taking the food before we even eat? You will answer him that we need to tell the story of the exit of Egypt before we eat. We can't just eat. You need to listen to the story. So at least now we know how to answer him. Still, I think the question is why we do all these artificial things. We take the table, and if we take the table, why we bring it back? We bring it back because now we're going to tell the Haggadah and we're going to show the matzah, we're going to show the matzah, the maror. So why we took it? It's weird that we're doing artificial things just for the children to say, hey, what's going on? By the way, the children don't pay attention to all of this stuff. They don't know why we're doing this. It's written in the Haggadah book. So we need to understand. Third question. Fourth question, now we are traveling to Bnei Brak. We are, this is exactly where the last terrorist attack was, Bnei Brak. So we are studying and learning, God willing, for strengthening the families which lost a close one, which won't be sitting at the Seder, and for the speedy recovery of the sick. So it's very interesting also, if you know, in Israel, there is a junction called Mesubim Junction. Mesubim Junction. The Mesubim Junction is in Bnei Brak. Why it's called Mesubim? Because of these 4 rabbis which were Mesubim in Bnei Brak. So when Tzomet Mesubim is to remember this story. It happened that Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon were reclining at the Seder. They were chatting, they were discussing the Exodus. And they did it during all the night until their students came and told them, hey, masters, it's already daylight. You need to say the morning Shema. You know this story, right? Amazing. They are so engaged in Torah learning, Torah studying, that they spend the whole night. And we try to mimic them. We wish we would be so engaged and so involved. And we are trying to mimic them, but I have hard time to get so passionate about the story. But there are also some questions. You know, first, they don't see daylight. One of the explanation is because this was at the time of the Bar Korba uprising. And Rabbi Akiva was supporting the uprising of Bar Korba. So they were hiding. They were hiding underground. And the Seder was not with window outside. And they were hiding. But if indeed they told the whole story of the Magid, so they didn't eat matzah, right? They didn't eat the matzah, they didn't eat the maror. They were during Magid, right? If we go back to so they are now in Magid. They didn't get to רוצה because they spoke all night in Magid. So what, they didn't eat matzah? So the Sfat Emet is saying, העוסק במצווה פטור במצווה. They were so busy in a mitzvah to tell the story of the Exodus. So they were patur, they were waived of the mitzvah to eat matzah. But it's hard to believe that sages of this magnitude, they wouldn't scrupulously perform all the mitzvah, including the mitzvah of matzah. Yeah, we have only 14 steps here. The last one, I don't know, we'll have to check. I don't remember. Check your Agada after this. If you think I can remember 15 steps, I can't. So basically, what our question here is about, it's a serious question about this Bnei Brak Seder. How can it be that all these rabbis, Tanaim, they were the writers of the Mishnah, how can it be that they didn't eat matzah on the night of Pesach? So that's our other question. So now we have, I believe, 5 questions, right? Let's check that we have 5 questions. Yeah, so we have the question of the Karpas, of the Yachatz, of the Manishtana, removing the table, and the Bnei Brak Seder. Okay. So we will go to the answers. And I want to introduce a rabbi, an amazing rabbi, a genius, which is, his name is Rav Mordechai Breuer. He is from the Gush. He used to be a neighbor, but I wasn't living here. He passed away 15 years ago. He was the founder of the Haaretz Zion Yeshiva, a very famous yeshiva in Israel. A Zionist yeshiva, a big one, one of the biggest one. And he was also nominated and he won the Israel Prize for his Tanakh studies. He has a very interesting article that in Hebrew, in a book which is not very known, but what I'm going to teach today are the answers. And he has more questions, are mostly from what he said, or even if you can say almost totally from this book. So to answer, we need to go back to the Mishnah. So we went through the Agada that we say today. If we read the Mishnah, the Agada and the Seder night is different. How it is written in the Mishnah? It is written in the Mishnah that Iviu lefanav, so that they brought vegetable before the leader of the Seder. He dips the first dipping, the chazeret, before he reaches the dessert of the bread, which is the bitter herbs. So it starts like we do today. But then they brought before him matzah and charoset and 2 cooked dishes. Although eating charoset is not a mitzvah, but for Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok, actually, it is a mitzvah. And they broke before him, during the time of the temple, they broke before him the body of the Pesach, of the lamb. What do we see here? We see that they are bringing the food and they are eating before they pour the second cup. So in the Mishnah, we are eating before we say the Megid, before we tell the story of Pesach. Why is that? Because at the time of the temple, the mitzvah, as we learn, was to eat the Passover lamb. And we needed to eat the Passover lamb before midnight. So they started right away, and the center of the night was eating the Paschal lamb. So right away, they started with the Kiddush and with eating the bitter herbs to open the appetite. So that's also something important. It was customary to have an aperitif. The aperitif was, today we would eat almonds and nuts. At the time of the temple, the aperitif to open up the appetite was to eat bitter herbs. So the first bitter herb was actually to open the appetite, and then they would straight away eat. That's what the Mishnah is showing us here. They broke before him matzah and charoset and 2 cooked dishes, and they broke before him the body of the Pasach lamb, and they would eat. And then they poured the second cup for the leader of the Seder, and here the son asked his father the question. And indeed, the question were a reaction to the meal. Why this night is different from all other night? We just went through the Pesach Seder, and we have eaten only matzah. We didn't eat the regular bread. We have eaten, in other nights, we eat other vegetables. But this night, we are eating only bitter herbs, only maror, together with the Pesach lamb. And all the other night we eat. And this is a question we don't have in our Agada. So the Agada of the Mishnah, the 4 questions are different. On all nights we eat either roasted, stewed, or cooked meat. But on this night, all the meat is roasted. And on all nights, we dip the vegetable only once at the beginning of the meal to open the appetite. But on this night, we ate it twice because we also ate the maror together with the Pesach. So basically, the temple Seder was very different. And it was a lot more enjoyable, a lot more natural. Let's go through it. So first we do Kiddush. Then everybody for the meal wash their hand. Everybody are washing their hand. Why they wash their hand? As we do every meal, we wash our hands. Today, we don't wash our hands, only the Seder leader wash, and it's really weird. He's doing it because he's dipping the bitter herbs. But in all the year, we don't wash when we dip a salad into some liquid. So there are a lot of discussions, but basically at the time of the temple, it was very simple. Everybody washed their hands. They eat karpas to open the appetite, to open the meal. They can eat kazait. Today we don't eat kazait. And they didn't eat to prompt the children question. They ate in order to open the meal. It was a natural eating. And then when they invite people to join the meal, they invite people after Kiddush, after the aperitif. They say, anybody wants to join us for meal? So that was a timely invitation. You would invite people which were needy, and they would sit and eat right away. They wouldn't have to wait 3 hours. Then they got into the meal. If you remember, the meal would be chagiga and Passover lamb, because the Passover lamb, you need to make sure that at least kazait is when you are already satisfied. And they wouldn't get to the agada until they remove the table. So the removal of the table that we asked about was after the meal. It was at the end of the meal, and it was very natural. And then we would serve the second glass after the meal. And after we are done with the meal, we say the agada. And then the question are real question, and the children ask the question rather than reciting the question. So basically what we see here, that all the questions that we ask, let's go back to make sure we answered everything. So basically we had 5 questions. So the dipping was natural, and the first dipping was to open the appetite, to open the meal. It was an aperitif, and it wasn't to ask the children. Only today in our Seder, because what's going on in our Seder? Because today we are not in a rush to finish to eat the Korban Pesach by midnight. So, and because today there is no mitzvah of eating, we don't really value the delight of eating on the king's table because there is no temple. So we're not really at the king's table. So what's more important than the meal today is telling the story. So today, the sages have said, start with the story and only eat after the story. But then we kept all the preparation of the meal, like the karpas is preparation of the meal to trigger the appetite. And the invitation is also part of the presentation of the meal, of the preparation of the meal. The same way we do motzi and we distribute matzah. At Yachas, we would distribute matzah. And we would invite the needy, and the needy would come and eat with us right away. So basically today, the Yachas, we ask also, today we are saying, listen, this is a bread of poverty, this is lechemoni, because we don't have the Bet HaMikdash. So that's what we say in the third sentence, this year here. Today we are still slaves. We are still without the Bet HaMikdash. We are still far from the land of Israel. We are in an agada of Galus. Next year, we will be able to invite people and they will eat with us. So the questions were spontaneous questions related to the food after the meal. And the removal of the table would be actually on time after we ate. And if we go to the Seder in Bnei Brak, the Seder in Bnei Brak, actually what happened is that this is indeed after the destruction of the temple. We said it's 130 years after the destruction of the temple, but they were still, even just after the destruction of the temple, it took hundreds of years to swap the meal and the Agada, telling the story. They have already ate, they have already eaten, they already ate, and they already ate matzah, and they are saying the Megid after they ate matzah. So that's why they continue to tell the whole story until daylight, because so they didn't miss any mitzvah. One thing we see that it took hundreds of years to switch the way we're switching. So in fact, when our children are saying, we ask, what should we, when the children are asking, why are you doing it this weird way? Our answer should be that, we would actually, if the child asks about why we dipping early, and why we inviting people before the time, and why we removing the table before we starting eating, our answer should be, listen son, listen daughter, we don't have the temple. At the time of the temple, we would first eat, we would have fun together and eat together the lamb, we would sit on the table of Hashem. And everything was in order. We had a Seder which was in order. Today we have an unordinary Seder. And we are telling our son, listen, you need to know all these anomalies we went through is to know that we are in an anomal, we are in a weird situation, and we need to really hope לשנה הבאה בירושלים הבנויה that we will eat this year the Korban Pesach in Jerusalem, and we will go back to have a meal before we start telling the story, and we will invite people to our meal before they subscribe, and we will go back to the regular order, God willing. And the question of our children would be spontaneous question. So that's how we will be back sitting on the table of Hashem. We will be delighted with a very good meal. We won't be suffering hours of reading. And until now, when people are complaining, you need to tell them, listen, yes, you're right, we should be eating. We should be eating either way, you're right. But we need to tell the story first, because we need to realize that we're in a dire state. We need to realize that we are not in Jerusalem, the temple is not built. We have still foreigners which are walking on the Temple Mount. We are not a sovereign country, although we fake we are. And we are missing the art of Judaism. And because of the lack of Korban Pesach, once we will have the Korban Pesach, we'll sit on Hashem table. He will delight us. He will ask us to eat the most tender meat when we're already satisfied. So that's the real story of Passover. And that's the real story. And in the meantime, we have a Seder which is messed up, because we are all messed up. So our sages said, messed up your Seder, start with telling the story and delay the eating, but all the signs of preparation of the eating, like the first dipping, like the manishtanas, the removal of the table, everything stayed in place. So the children will answer, and what will ask. They're gonna ask, they're gonna say, what's going on? What's going on? Why are we spending so much time? Yes, we need to spend so much time because we are in Galus. Even here in Israel, we're in Galus. We are missing the temple. And until we get the temple, we will be stuck with doing things upside down. Once we have the temple, we will enjoy a real good meal, and the kids will ask spontaneous questions, and it will be true joy. So feel free to tell us and share and ask. I believe you can
What-
unmute. Please.
What is meant? Hi, this is Tesha.
Hi, Tesha.
What is meant by telling the story? Because in Latin, to tell means to discern truth. So are the youth given a intellectual tool to discern truth when you tell the story?
You know, in fact, only a free man or a free woman can tell a story. What it means to tell your story? It means you're looking at your life with a perspective. The slave doesn't tell any story. He doesn't have any time to tell any story. He's living his life at the moment, surviving, doesn't know if he will be living in tomorrow. So there is no place for perspective and retrospective. So you're saying in Latin to tell is truth.
To tell means to discern truth.
To discern.
But in order to make a difference, there needs to be a tool of discernment, how to think. So the question is, what is given to the children to help them discern truth?
So I think in Hebrew, sipur, lesaper, it's like storytelling. It's subjective, is how did you experience it? How did you live it? You know, we're not trying to get to the truth. We're trying to share our experience as individual and as a collective. That's why the Agada is only a template. You can divert, you can tell your own story. How did you are taking a perspective on your Jewish life as what it means to be Jewish, what it means to be part of the Jewish people, what it means today, what it means. It's a time of lesaper, to tell the story. Storytelling, I'm telling my story. I'm telling the story of my father. I'm telling the story of my grandfather. I'm a chain which is telling the story. But every generation, it's a different story. The Rebbe used to say there is a fifth child, the one which didn't show up to the Seder table. And we need to reach out to him or to her. And you can see that the Agada is not mentioning the land of Israel. The only place the land of Israel is mentioned is in Dayenu. Dayenu is a late addition. He wasn't in the Rambam Agada. Why? Because he wasn't relevant in the Agada of the Galut. You cannot thank things you didn't receive. You cannot thank Hashem that he gave you the land because we don't have the land. So we are thanking Hashem that he gave us the Torah. So the Seder today, we shifted from he gave us the land, he gave us the temple, he gave us a beautiful life in our land, in our homeland, with our temple, and we are sitting at his table. We are now saying he gave us the Torah. Because that, which is really important, but that's the only thing we have now. Okay, but now we are coming back to Israel, and now we need to build the third temple. So we need to tell our story. It's important to understand the anomalies of the Galus Agada, so we can know we lost it. We made anomaly normal. But that's what we want to rectify. We need to understand that the Agada we have today is a dire Agada, is a messed up Agada. It is messed up to tell our subjective story that we are messed up. As a Jewish people who are messed up. We don't have the main thing. We cannot really tap into our supraconscious. We cannot really connect to Hashem. We can somewhat. But if we are aware of that gap, so we can fulfill it. There is no rectification without being aware but with 2,000 years of Galus, we have lost the healthy awareness of our dire state.